snag? Let's dive into a story that starts sweet and turns sour, all over a simple living arrangement. So we have Mr. Halstead and Miss Stevens. He claims they had a deal. He'd pay the rent and utilities. She'd cover the food. They lived together from March through most of May. He says he paid the rent, which was a hefty $1,350 a month, for all 3 months she was there. Sounds straightforward, right? But then we hear from Miss Stevens. She's a special education teacher, and her story adds a few more layers. She says she started dating Mr. Halstead on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Just before that, she had ended a 5-year relationship and was living with her ex-boyfriend. After the breakup, she moved out and, according to her, stayed with her mom for a couple of weeks. She says this was while Mr. Halstead was getting the condo ready for them to move into together. This is where their stories start to clash. Mr. Halstead jumps in and says, "That's incorrect." He claims she moved directly from her ex-boyfriend's place into his life. He says she only stayed with her mom for a couple of days, not weeks, while they were waiting for the condo to be cleaned and finalized. He even says he stayed with her at her mother's house during that brief period. So we have 2 different timelines. She says she was at her mom's for a couple of weeks, creating a buffer between relationships. He says it was just a couple of days, and they were already together, practically living together, even before the condo was officially ready. This detail might seem small, but it changes the whole dynamic of their arrangement. Was it a carefully planned move or a rushed decision? The core of their disagreement seems to be about this verbal agreement. He paid the big bills, rent, electricity, utilities. Her part was supposed to be the food and other particulars. But what exactly does particulars mean? That's the kind of vague term that can cause a lot of trouble later on. When one person thinks it means one thing and the other has a completely different idea, you're setting yourself up for conflict. Think about it from his perspective. He's covering over $1,300 in rent plus other bills, expecting her to handle the groceries. From her side, she's just left a long-term relationship, jumped into a new one, and moved homes twice in a very short span of time. That's a lot of upheaval. It's easy to see how details about who pays for what could get lost in the shuffle. The timeline discrepancy is key. If she was only at her mom's for a few days, like he says, it makes their move-in feel much more impulsive. It suggests they dove in headfirst. If she was there for a couple of weeks, as she claims, it implies a bit more breathing room and planning. Why does this matter? Because the context of how their cohabitation began could influence how we see their financial agreement. A rushed, romantic decision might not have had the same level of serious discussion as a more planned-out move. This is a classic he said, she said situation. Without a written agreement, it all comes down to their word against each other's. Who is more believable? The man who laid out the financial terms as he saw them? Or the woman who was navigating a major life change? The argument over a few weeks at her mom's house becomes a crucial piece of the puzzle. It speaks to their credibility and how they each remember the start of their life together. What's really fascinating here is how a simple verbal agreement can fall apart so spectacularly. When you're in the honeymoon phase of a relationship, you might think a handshake or a simple conversation is enough. You trust the other person, but life happens. Expectations differ. And when money is involved, even small misunderstandings can blow up into major disputes. This case is a perfect example of why getting things in writing, even with someone you care about, can save a lot of heartache down the road. As we look at their conflicting stories, we have to ask, who has more to lose? He's out the rent money, he says he paid. What is she out? Is this dispute just about money, or is it about the principle of the matter? Is it about broken promises and hurt feelings from a relationship that ended badly? Often, these financial disagreements are just the surface-level symptom of deeper emotional issues. The fact that she's a special ed teacher and well, we don't know what he does, but he can afford a $1,350 a month condo. Does that change how you see things? Sometimes our perceptions of people's professions can unconsciously bias us. We might see her as a caring, responsible person because of her job, or we might see him as the more financially stable partner. But none of that proves who is telling the truth. Let's circle back to the core issue, the verbal contract. He says it was clear, rent and utilities for him, food and particulars for her. She hasn't directly denied this, but the focus has shifted to the timeline of her moving in. This is a common tactic. When the facts of an agreement are not in your favor, you might try to discredit the other person's character or memory. By questioning the timeline, her side might be trying to paint him as someone who misremembers or exaggerates things. If he's wrong about how long she stayed at her mom's, could he also be wrong about the specifics of their financial deal? It's a tangled web. A relationship that starts on Valentine's Day, a rapid move-in, a verbal agreement, and now a dispute over who is responsible for what. It's a cautionary tale for anyone thinking of moving in with a new partner. The romance can be exciting, but the practicalities need to be handled with care and clarity. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a situation just like this one, trying to explain your side of the story and prove what was said in a private conversation weeks or months ago. What do you think? Based on what we've heard so far, whose story seems more plausible? The man with the clear, if unwritten, financial breakdown? Or the woman whose life was in major transition? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on this messy situation. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating real-life disputes. Thanks for watching. Today, we read diving into a courtroom drama that asks a very familiar question. When you re-in a relationship, is money you give your partner a loan or a gift? Let's get into case number 174, Stevens versus Holstead. So Miss Stevens is suing her ex-boyfriend, Mr. Holstead, claiming he owes her money for loans she gave him during their relationship. Mr. Holstead, on the other hand, admits he got the money but argues it was all a gift. He says she was just being generous to her new boyfriend. Let's set the scene. The judge starts by asking Mr. Holstead about his job. He's a network engineer, making a pretty decent salary of 80 grand a year plus commission. He started his current job on February 22nd, 2010. Now here's where it gets interesting. When did he and Miss Stevens get together? February 14th, 2010, Valentine's Day. That's just 8 days before he started his new job. Talk about a whirlwind romance. The judge then turns to Miss Stevens and asks about the first loan. She says that just a couple of weeks after they met, she loaned him over $1,600 for work-related expenses. She claims they had a verbal agreement that he would pay her back with his very first paycheck. Mr. Holstead immediately denies this, saying there was no such agreement. So the judge wants details. How did these work-related expenses come up? Mr. Holstead explains that he had a business trip coming up. He says, "We were starting our lives together, ... But the judge cuts him off right there. "You weren't starting your life together," she says. "You met her February 14th, you start your new job. February 22nd. You've known each other for a week. She's not buying the starting our lives together story just yet." Then Mr. Holstead adds another layer. He says they moved in together pretty much instantly. The judge is surprised. Instantly? They met at a friend's birthday party at a bar on Valentine's Day and were inseparable ever since. He says they just clicked, had a great rapport, and she seemed like a genuine, good person. But the judge senses there's more to it. She asks him where he was living before he met Miss Stevens. And here's the bombshell. Mr. Holstead admits, "I was living out of my car, on friends' couches." So he was essentially homeless when he met her. The judge pieces it together. So you connected right away, living out of your car. You met her. She was lonely and she said, "You might as well move in with me." But wait, Mr. Holstead corrects the record. He claims Miss Stevens didn't have her own place either. He says she was living with her then boyfriend, who was 20 years older than her. This story just keeps getting more complicated. So, if neither of them had a stable place, where did they move to? Mr. Holstead explains that he negotiated a loan from his new employer to secure a condo. And Miss Stevens moved in with him into that new condo on March 1st. And how long did this cohabitation last? According to him, she moved out around the middle or end of May. So the whole relationship, from meeting to moving in together to breaking up, happened in the span of about 3 months. So we have a guy who was living out of his car, gets a new job, meets a woman, and within weeks, they're living together in a condo he secured with a loan from his new employer. And during this time, she's giving him money that she considers a loan and he considers a gift. What do you think?